What's going on, everybody? Good afternoon. Hope you guys are doing well. And we got some more Seattle Seahawks training camp stuff to go into. I'm going to go ahead and get this video out a little bit earlier than yesterday because I have my stream with the Hawks Nest tonight. So I basically just waited for what seemed to be all the relevant information to be released to the public. And I'm just going to go ahead and jump on it. And if I miss anything, then I'm going to have to do some kind of addendum tomorrow or maybe even late tonight. I don't know, but I don't want to be uploading a video right as I go live with the Hawks Nest. So, yeah. Before I get into any of the training camp stuff, go check out the stream that I do tonight with the Hawks Nest. Should start at right around 7 p.m. And we're going to talk about this Chargers game. We're going to talk about the last couple months of the offseason. We're going to talk a little bit about training camp. You guys probably know how we do it by now if you've been watching the streams, but we haven't streamed in a few months. So head on over there. And yeah, that's really all the news that I have for you guys. We're going to go ahead and take a look at today's training camp session. And the main reason why I'm able to get this video out a little bit earlier than usual, because normally it wouldn't even be possible because it takes hours to get all the information sometimes. It was a pretty light day of practice. It was a walkthrough kind of day. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But this was a chill, focusing on the mental part of football, focusing on the communication part of football type of practice. So not as much physicality, maybe because of what happened yesterday with all the fights. So who knows? But let's talk about what there is to talk about. But before we get into that, I hope you like this video. If you do, please click the like button down below. It helps the channel out a lot. Subscribe if you're new and you want daily Seahawks content. Become a channel member for $2 a month. Click the bell for notifications. Those are the best way to help support the channel. All right, so before we get to training camp stuff, we got roster news to get into. Dugar reports that the Seahawks signed a UDFA rookie defensive tackle to replace the defensive tackle that they had, who I believe got hurt. They swap out Mario Kendricks, or swap in Mario Kendricks, and swap out Rodney Matthews. So unlikely to have too much of an effect, but these guys are going to play in preseason games, presumably. That's why they're here. So it's not like they don't matter at all. It's not like they don't exist. John Boyle lists another roster move the Seahawks made. They signed a cornerback, Willie Roberts. Not necessarily a position of need, but they did have a roster spot that was open because Matt Gotel got injured and has been waived, which is a disappointment to some because there was some excitement around Matt Gotel for this season, but not really room for him in the nose tackle room with the nose tackles we already have. Beyond that, Marcus Sims did clear waivers, so he has reverted to Seattle's injury reserve list, so he remains on the team, but he isn't going to play this year, basically. He's hurt, so he remains a Seahawk, and we kind of have first crack at him next offseason, but he's hurt for now, so does stick around, which is cool. He was a guy I actually made a video about several weeks ago when we signed him. He was I believe, the UFL guy. So there's some excitement there. He did some pretty decent things in the UFL. There was some returner potential. All right, so on to training camp itself. This was what Mike McDonald calls an ACT practice, as Brady Henderson puts it. They focus on alignment, communication, and technique. So it's a walkthrough. And because it was a walkthrough, number one, there isn't quite as much you can learn. Like, you can't really point out highlights like, oh, Geno Smith threw a perfect pass to DK Metcalf 50 yards down the field, or, oh, Devin Witherspoon made an incredible play on the ball there on that out route. You're not going to see that stuff because guys are not going at full speed. So there's less to glean, and there's also less potential for a lot of fighting, like we saw yesterday. So maybe not such a bad thing after what we saw go down on the VMAC field yesterday. But chill day. We have a game in 2 days, so it makes sense. This is the chill day. Tomorrow, I assume they're not going to do anything at all, and if they do anything, it's going to be very light. But you don't practice on Saturday before a game, right? So you wouldn't expect them to practice on the Friday before a Saturday game. So yeah, one thing that happened because of that was Dre'Mont Jones actually got to take part. And this is the first time Dre'Mont Jones has done anything since hurting his hamstring like 2 weeks ago almost. So that's good. Now, he probably wouldn't have participated if it was a normal practice, right? Because you're talking about a hamstring injury that is clearly taking longer to bounce back from than expected. But it's good to see him out there anyway. Just a reminder that he is there. More on him a little bit later. The offensive line alignments from Condota here, I want to talk about this for a second, remains the same. So even though we've gone through basically all of the early portion of training camp, today was actually the final day that fans could go and watch training camp. We still have not seen any movement in the starting offensive line. It was Charles Cross, Laken Tomlinson, Olu Oluwatimi, although Oluwatimi is obviously going to get bumped out for Connor Williams when Connor gets here, Anthony Bradford, and Fant. So it's the same minus Lucas because Lucas is still hurt, but it hasn't moved. The backup team, obviously it contains the guys that we expect to be the backups, but Christian Haynes is still the backup right guard as of right now. Everything else is totally as expected. Like, it's Forsyth, O'Neill, Harris, Haynes, Curtis, and then the third team is Greenfield, Lomia, Sundell, Manning, and then Percher or Mike Jarrell. And I assume Jarrell's eventually going to kind of take that spot for himself. I mean, we drafted the guy. So, the only thing there that's a little bit head-scratching, well, I don't want to say head-scratching, but a little bit of maybe a concern would be Christian Haynes. My bad. But he hasn't yet taken the starting job. I have heard he looks good, so this might just be a situation where they're not going to give it to him until he earns it in the preseason. And in fairness, I mean, Bradford's exciting in his own way, right? This is his second year. He didn't play terribly last year. There is some interesting potential there for sure. But I thought Haynes would be the day one starter. It might be a Bo Nix situation where Bo Nix is still listed as the third stringer in Denver, even though I think we all know he's going to start. Probably because the coaches want to make him earn it. But I mean, it's not like we listed all of our rookies as third stringers the way the Broncos did. So everything else as expected for now. But I did note that Haynes still hasn't taken that job. Also back on the field today after sitting out yesterday and sitting out part of the previous day. I forgot to mention this in my previous videos. Noah Fant actually missed a little bit of practice with the injury. He was back on the field. Again, it was a walkthrough day. It was a chill day. I want to stress that. So it's not a guarantee of anything, but I mean, I didn't see Abe Lucas out there, right? So it's not like you can be out there when you're dragging your leg around. You can't be out there when you're genuinely hurt. So seems to be fine. Doesn't seem like a big deal at all. So Noah Fant's cool. Jerome Baker is still out. Now, Jerome Baker is a veteran. So like Condota says here, it makes a little bit more sense for him to rest and try to get back for next week, I guess. I will say that it's very important he gets reps because he is trying to learn stuff. He's the inside linebacker in this defense, and there's going to be a lot on his shoulders. But not a surprise that he's still out. Dre'Mont Jones is back out there. Curtis Crabtree also reports the same. Mike Jackson also back out on the field today, and he had missed a little bit of time lately. And in his absence, Trey Brown had been playing really well, so Mike probably felt like I need to get back out there to remind people that I can play too. So injury stuff starting to clear up a little bit, although mostly that is because we had a chill day. Trey Brown was limited today, but Mike McDonald indicated he's totally fine. They actually did something interesting per Condota today. They gave Woolen a chance to play. I'm sorry. I read this wrong. Woolen, Witherspoon, and Burns worked as the starting cornerbacks in the nickel today. And that's interesting as well. Burns has the ability to play in the nickel. That might give him enough value to stick around when I've said many times that I don't think there's room on this roster for Artie Burns. But to me, Artie Burns, he offers that versatility. I do wonder if that makes us force a way to have room for him on the team. It's a long shot, I know, but there might be some value there that we as fans don't perceive because he is a veteran that's been around a while, and you kind of know what he is. It's not as exciting as somebody like DJ James or Nehemiah Pritchett. And I'm not saying those guys are going to go because we just drafted them. That would be very weird if we cut one of those guys. But I wonder if they find a way to fit Artie Burns onto the roster because of his versatility and experience. And McDonald also commented a little bit about the injury stuff. He did say that he thinks that Dre'Mont Jones, Noah Fant, and Darrell Taylor will practice next week. And by that, I assume he means the full practice, not the walkthrough. So if that's the case, then those guys are just about ready to get back. Now, we've already been told that Dre'Mont Jones's injury was minor and then he missed basically 2 weeks. So I'll believe it when I see it. But McDonald seems to think that those guys are going to be fine. Now, he was not quite so optimistic about a couple other players. Mike Jackson, to be decided. Jerome Baker, to be decided. Now, Mike Jackson, I can go with that one way or the other there. I can take or leave that kind of because we are good at corner and Trey Brown's playing so well in camp. Jerome Baker, I'd like to see him back next week for sure. If I don't see him back next week, I'm going to start to get alarmed because there's going to be a lot of stuff hanging on Jerome Baker's shoulders in the 2024 season. If we don't get a good season out of Baker and we don't get a relatively full season out of Baker, then the defense is going to have trouble because there's not much they can do to patch things up there. That is not a position where they have depth. Like, if somebody like a Reek Woolen has a bad year this year and isn't cutting it, there are plenty of guys you could actually put out there to replace him and feel pretty good about it. You can put in Mike Jackson, you can put in Trey Brown, maybe even Artie Burns, and it's not the end of the world. But Baker, like it's Baker or bust. So that gets us to a little bit about the upcoming preseason game. We are 2 days away from taking on the Chargers. Mike McDonald did speak a little bit about it, and Dugar has some of his comments here. Geno Smith not expected to play, and some other offensive starters will not play either. So we'll see exactly what that ends up meaning. So it sounds like the offense is going to be chill. The defense, maybe not so much. He indicated, McDonald did, that the defensive starters would go. So expect to see Tyrell Dodson, expect to see Nwosu, Mafe, Jenkins, Woolen, Witherspoon. Expect to see a lot of the stuff on defense, which makes sense because they're learning a new defense, and the defense is expected to be a stark departure from what we saw last year. Now we're learning a new offense as well, but at a certain point, if Geno's not going to be out there, there's not that much value in some of the other guys being out there, right? Because there is, like has been said, a big gap, a big divide between Geno and Sam Howell. There just is. Geno's much better right now. So if Geno's not out there and you're like a receiver, you lose a little bit of the value of playing in the preseason because you're trying to build a rapport with your quarterback. Well, if you're a receiver on this team, you probably already have a rapport with Geno because you played with him for at least a year, if not 2. And you're going to have Sam Howell out there. Even though Geno's not expected to play, McDonald did say that he has bounced back seamlessly from his injuries and absence, adding he's out there, he's rolling, he looks good, he looks sharp. So I think Geno being held out of the first preseason game isn't indicative of like, oh, the injury is actually much worse than we thought or anything like that. So if you were thinking along those lines, McDonald seems to kind of shoot that down a little bit. Now, we don't know exactly how Mike McDonald operates with injury stuff. He might be a guy who is overly positive. He might be a guy who is overly negative. We don't know yet. The Dre'Mont Jones thing, he seemed like he was a little bit optimistic on, but we need more data. Let's put it to you that way, right? We knew how Pete was with injuries. We knew that. Now we need to find out how McDonald is, but he doesn't seem concerned about Geno's injury last week at all. He also spoke a little bit about Connor Williams. We got this from Dugar here. Connor Williams will be here this weekend, and then they'll work on the rest of the plan from there. So he will not play this weekend. We are going to get Oluwatimi, which, I mean, look, there's certainly a scenario where Oluwatimi has to play this year, and him getting to play out there, especially snapping to Sam Howell, by the way. Like, the main reason why you want Connor Williams in here would be to develop his snap report with Geno Smith. Well, if Geno's not going to play, then it's not that big of a deal for Connor Williams to not play in the game. It's not like Connor Williams needs NFL experience. He's got plenty of that. He's played a ton of football over the last few years. So, Connor Williams coming in this weekend. Don't expect to see him in the preseason. We'll see exactly how they work him in when he gets here, but sounding encouraging for the most part. One cool thing that happened today was Tony Dungy was a visitor to practice. He spoke to the team. Tony Dungy is a mentor of Leslie Frazier, who is here as the assistant head coach for the Seattle Seahawks. kind of helping support McDonald. And Dungy is someone who was very important to a younger Leslie Frazier. Tony Dungy, very, very interesting NFL head coach. He was somebody who was very mild-mannered, but you never really doubted that he was in control, that he had a firm hand, but he didn't do it by yelling or screaming. He didn't do it by being a tough guy. He just kind of, I think he wrote a book called Quiet Strength, and that was actually a really good title for his book. He did have quiet strength. He was not somebody who needed to pound his chest and rip his pants off and act like a pro wrestler to get people to think he's serious. He was somebody who was mild-mannered, but you never got the sense that the team was going to walk all over him or bully him, or he was some, cupcake coach or anything like that. So, in his own way, a legendary NFL coach comes into a practice, to the practice and speaks to the team. So pretty cool there. Greg Bell also has this about some other comments from McDonald about the fight day practice of Wednesday. And he did specify that despite some of the issues, and there were issues, don't get me wrong. I mean, people got ejected out of practice. There's no way that happens without there being genuine issues. He was very clear that he believes that this is a good thing. He wants things like this. He says, we had a great practice yesterday. He wants that level of intensity. And I'm going to say it again. Yeah, the line was crossed once or twice on Wednesday. There's no doubt about that. It got out of hand, but those are the kinds of practices that the Legion of Boom had. Those are the kinds of practices that the early 2010 Seahawks had. And those teams went to Super Bowls. Those teams won a Super Bowl. Those teams had elite level success. So you're going to have some of this stuff if you want to have success at the highest level most of the time. Sometimes maybe you can find a team of Boy Scouts that wins championships, but a little bit of this stuff is not anything that I think anybody should be unhappy with. And final thing from Condota here, kind of talking about the practice as a whole. McDonald did alter the schedule according to him. He doesn't know if it was because of the fights or if it was just because they felt like they wanted to take it easy a couple days before a game. But he did say that the original plan was to have a normal practice, and McDonald decided to just do a walkthrough. So read into that as you will. I don't think it's a bad idea to do walkthroughs on the final practice before any game. That's what McCarthy does in Dallas. They do a walkthrough every Friday. So I don't think it's a bad idea. But most teams don't do it. So we'll see if it ends up working out for McDonald. All right. That's it for this video. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think. Stream in a few hours with the Hawks Nest. Be there. Go Hawks.